All right, welcome back to the Squid Talk podcast.
Yep.
Huge guest today. I'm honored to be here. I'm also very excited to be here talking about this. That's kind of how I get out of saying I'm being nervous. It like gets the nerves out. But Remi Adeleke,
Yes, sir.
former Navy SEAL, crazy story. Now you're an entrepreneur, actor, writer,
filmmaker.
director, filmmaker.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's absolutely wild. So thank you for coming on.
No,
It was also super last minute, so thank you for being lenient.
All good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I guess let's get into it. So.
Yeah.
Born in Nigeria,
Yeah.
right? Then you came up here when you were 6 years old? 5 years old. How do you remember, like, what happened back then? I feel like I don't remember anything below 15.
You know, I don't remember too much. It's not until, like, I look at pictures or like just old art that my dad had or books where memories come back. But for the most part, a lot of my memories I'm primarily from the Bronx, but I do remember little things like we had a compound, we had horses, we had drivers, we lived a very luxurious life. So some of those things I remember. I went back to Nigeria in 2018 to visit, you know, because I was writing my book and I wanted to kind of have a fresh lens and a fresh perspective and breathe the air so that I could write more clearly. And I went to the school, the private school I went to, and all these memories came back. Like I remember being a kid and having my first fight as a kid at the school. And I must have been about 4 years old, and 4, maybe even 5. I think I was leaning more towards 4. My mom came to the school, my dad, and she was upset because her little boy got into a fight, but my dad was just like, yes, my little warrior, my little
necessary.
chief. Yeah. He was proud because that was my first fight as a kid, you know. And so there are things like that I remember, you know, when I breathe the air, when I see something visually, and that's I think the way I am. And other things in life as well, you know, especially when I'm, you know, writing a film or writing a book, certain things come to me when I see a picture or I smell something, and that helps me kind of put it down on paper. But yeah, my primary memories where I don't need smell or other things is most of those memories are from the Bronx.
And I was reading your book. I know you said you're born in Nigeria, but the Bronx was your home.
Yeah.
So would you be able to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
I know, what's it like going from, because essentially you were kind of like royalty, right?
Yeah. So,
in terms of a hierarchy terms.
Yeah, so my dad, he was a firstborn son to my grandfather. My grandfather was a chief in the Yoruba tribe. He had like 8 or 9 wives, kept on having girls. Finally, my dad was born, so he was the heir. Adeleke, Ade means crown, Leke means is supreme. So we're Yoruba. So my dad was like, my grandfather was a chief in the Yoruba tribe. So then my father ended up being the firstborn son. He was a chief in the Yoruba tribe. And so that's where the royal lineage comes from. And you know, now we didn't have, the government didn't give us a stipend. So oh, here's $1 million a year because you're. But my dad ended up, you know, being very intelligent and being a mastermind in everything that he did. He was just so diverse in his businesses. He kind of created that royal type wealth for us and our family. So. Yeah, you know, my full name is actually Ade Remi, which means the crown has appeased me. So anytime you have Ade in front of a name, it means crown. So yeah.
Is that kind of so next up in a way?
As far as
next up, like next in line?
No, I have brothers. I have older brothers.
Oh, okay.
So you know, I would probably be down at the bottom. But you know, I've made my name in a different way.
Absolutely. The one thing I really liked about your father is, especially in today's day and age, a lot of people tend to hate on people who've achieved success, capitalists. But your dad was kind of like, I remember that the one quote you said, he wanted to make a change through business, essentially, as opposed to like where most other officials just wanted to take from people. So I really liked that. I thought that was very honorable, and I'm sure that had an imprint on you.
Yeah, he would rather use his resources because Nigeria has just historically been a very corrupt country. And, you know, like I said, I remember going in 2018, as soon as you get off the plane, like the TSA people are like, what gift do you have for me? Like,
wow,
in order to get through.
I was going to ask, like, what's the geopolitical landscape like today? It's
still very, very corrupt. You have people who, like here in the States, when you have people who grew up in poverty, like one of the things that speaking for the inner city, a lot of inner city kids look to in order to rise out of that poverty are, music or sports or selling drugs in some cases. In Nigeria, like there's so much poverty, but what people look to in order to like rise out of that is politics. Because you can go into politics broke, poor, and come out a billionaire. And so you get a lot of politicians, not a millionaire, a billionaire. So you get a lot of politicians that, they run just to be able to get a seat of power so they can steal money. And they steal money, and then after their time, they flee to London. They go to London, they come to the U.S., and they live large for the rest of their lives. And so my dad, that was systemic, and it's been systemic, and it still is. But my dad, knowing that, he didn't need to go back to Nigeria. The only reason why he went back to Nigeria is because he wanted to develop like an Africa Wall Street. And so he wanted to spend his money to create a structure that would allow Nigeria to thrive from a business perspective, and not just Nigeria, but Africa as a whole, but the evils, the greed, the corruption kind of, took over, and my dad was essentially taken out, and everything he owned for the most part, which is the most valuable asset he had, Banana Island, which exists to this day, it was known as Lagoon City, but it's now known as Banana Island, was taken from him, and he died, and we went from rich to poor.
Yeah, and he was constantly fighting those forces of evil, you could say. Like that was a daily battle. There's always something new. Always trying to screw him over. That's unfortunate. And the question I have is like being in the position, former Navy SEAL. You also understand the culture over there quite a bit. Do you think there's a way to fix that deep rooted corruption? I'm
laughing because when I was in Nigeria, I asked this very question. I was going on a news station to share my story, and my dad's well known in Nigeria, and so I asked one of the news reporters. I won't mention her name because it's a very controversial statement she said. But when we were riding on a boat to the news station, I said, "What can be done? What can be done to fix this corruption so that it ends?" Because as we were on the boat, there were islands, literally we were passing, because Lagos is, there's a lot of islands around Lagos, right? And so there was about 2 or 3 islands we passed that were that people inhabited, but they were just trash islands. And you see these naked kids walking around, and you just see all of this abject poverty, and she was shaking her head, and there's no reason. Nigeria should be like a Saudi Arabia, because Nigeria.
That's what I was thinking of in my head. Why are those islands not centers of?
Well, it should be. Well, Nigeria has oil. A lot of people don't know this. Nigeria has a lot of oil. A lot of natural gas, cocoa. A lot of natural resources and minerals and so on and so forth. So there's no reason why Nigeria shouldn't be a freaking Saudi Arabia. But because of the corruption, everybody steals. So I say all that to say, I asked this reporter, I said, what can be done to fix this? And I don't agree with her response, but she was like, you got to kill everybody up into the age of 7, because even at 7, 8, they're still corrupt. They learn to be very corrupt, and then we start all over from there. I was like, dang. She's like, I was like, there's no other way. She's like, that's the only way.
And she's a local reporter.
This is from a local Nigerian reporter who grew up in Nigeria.
And so she's very controversial within that setting, you're saying, right?
No, she's not controversial at all. She just made that statement because she's just so fed up with the corruption, just like so many Nigerians are so fed up with the corruption. I get messages every week from people in Nigeria saying, please, I want to get out of here. I want to bring me to America. Help sponsor me. Help do this. Help do that. Or help me get into the military. I want to join the military like you so that I could leave this country, this godforsaken place. These are Nigerians. A lot of Nigerians, and I have to say I'm sorry, but that's the mindset of a lot of Nigerians. They feel like here in America, you can start off with absolutely nothing and put in the work. I grew up poor, but I'm very successful at what I do now, and my brother grew up poor. He's an engineer. He works for the DOE. He once worked for the Saudi Aramco government, helping them find oil and pull oil off the ground. My half brother, he, is Nigerian. He's an ER doctor. My half sister, she went to the top MBA program in the country, and now she's a big consultant out in Connecticut. My other half brother is about to go to med school, right? So the thing about and we all had like very similar starts, right? But think about now, and I have a bunch of other cousins, and who are first generation, second generation Americans, and like one of my cousins, he's a triple major at MIT, biology, mathematics, and engineering. Right. And so like the thing about America is you can come here with absolutely nothing and put in the work. And if you put in the work, you can end up very successful. In Nigeria, you can put in the work 10 times over and still be in poverty.
Would you say it's a classist system in a way? Like your dad's a cab driver, you're a cab driver. Like you're not
yes and no, because you can get out of it, but you gotta kind of follow the broken rules, essentially, and do the bad things, and then you can rise up into positions of power. And so that's why you get a lot of people who are politicians, but they didn't come from a family of politicians. They essentially started from the bottom, and they were very charismatic. They utilized their intelligence, and they were able to, get people to believe in them and voting for them. And then before you know it, they got to where they got, and then they're doing the corrupt thing. So it's sad, man. It's really sad. Yeah.
What do you say to those? Because I 100% agree with you. I mean, like, you're a living example of coming from nothing, having a full reset, and then building up again. Everyone in your family's done it too. I guess I have two questions on that subject. Like, number one, do you think it's in your blood, or why is it that like have you ever heard of the story of two sons of an alcoholic father?
No.
I don't think it's based on anyone specifically, but the way I've heard it is you have this one son who's this brilliant entrepreneur, very successful. And then his brother, might have even been his twin brother, is a homeless and a drunk, and a drug addict. And the reporters go to the successful one and say, "Why are you here where you are today?" And he says, "My father was an alcoholic." And then they go to the brother who's on the exact opposite side of the spectrum. They say, "Why are you where you are today?" He says, "My father's an alcoholic." So why is it that every single person in your circle has been able to really achieve success in all of their individual fields?
I think it was because of our mothers. Nice. You know what I mean? We just knowing my mom was just like, you are going to be something. And my mom beat into us at a very young age, the importance of excellence and the importance of whatever you do it right the first time. That's what she would say to us all the time. Whatever you do it right the first time. She would make my brother and I wash and dry the dishes. One night it would be my turn to wash the dishes and then my brother's turn to dry, and then we would flip-flop the next night. And if the dishes weren't washed perfectly and dried perfectly, she would take them all out and make us start all over again from scratch. My mom would make my brother and I read New York Times articles and like these really big, thick historical books and write reports. And
that was punishment, right?
That was a punishment, but it was also in the summertime. It was the only way we can go outside and play. And, those reports had to be near perfect. And if the reports weren't near perfect, she would make us pick another article and start again. And that was, I think it all goes back to parenting, in my opinion. I know you mentioned the story about the sons of two sons of an alcoholic. But I think that my mom was consistently showing us the potential that we had, and she didn't settle at all. And, because she had no choice. Because she's raising two young kids in the Bronx, and it's like these guys have to make it. My mom never remarried. She never dated, and one of the reasons why when I asked her later in life, she said because she didn't want to bring any confusion in life, in my brother and our lives. So she said her main focus was to ensure that we became successful. So I think that a big part of it is parenting.
It's a big sacrifice.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of unconditional love there as well? Obviously 100%. Very tough love, but
100%. Yeah. Unconditional love, tough love, any type of love. Like my mom gave it to us. I mean, she would always build us up. Even after she spanked us for something we did wrong, she would always like pull us in and say, "Hey, I don't like doing this. I don't want to do this, but I love you, and if I love you, I'm going to discipline you to keep, because I'd rather discipline you than have like the cops on the street or a judge discipline you, And so yeah, my mom loved us unconditionally, and she also gave us tough love, and because she had to be the mom and the dad, you know. It's different with me and my wife now. I have 4 kids, and so my wife, you know, she plays the soft role sometimes, well, most of the time, and I'm the authoritarian, so to speak, right? And I'm the one that deals with the discipline for the most part. And so like we're able to split it up, but for the most part, my mom had to do it both by herself. But I mean, I think that it's a combination of things. I think one is parenting. I think another aspect to how a person develops into who they develop is I think DNA is a part of it as well. You know, because I have a family member who never didn't meet their dad until they were in their early 40s, and their dad was a really horrible alcoholic, and this person grew up in another country. And when he finally found his dad via like some, you know, the DNA ancestry or whatever the case may be, you know, him and his dad discovered that they were both alcoholics.
Wow.
So the son was also an alcoholic and still is an alcoholic. And the dad had been an alcoholic for a long time. So I think that there's a DNA piece to it as well, you know. And so, you know, my DNA, my dad was a person that would run through walls to get the job done. My mom has always been the person. I mean, you can look my mom up on Instagram. She's 70, about to be 72. She does pull-ups, push-ups, runs. I mean, she's a freaking beast. I mean, she out PTs like people half her age, you know, and because she has that DNA that says, hey, I'm going to get the job done. And so that combination coming from my mom and my dad, but then also my upbringing is what helped me, and I think what helped my brother, and what essentially helps guide my other siblings, you know, and why they're successful.
Love that. Yeah. And well, how do you balance compassion and motivation as a father, as a teammate, do you understand like my question, you know?
Yeah. Well, it depends on who I'm dealing with. Everybody's different, right? So with my kids, it's like my kids are my motivation. You know, like I don't want my kids to grow up the way I grew up. So like when I'm working, you know, and I'm always working with them in mind. You know, looking at them. And the cool thing is I get to work from home for the most part as a you know, a writer, screenwriter, filmmaker. It's not until I have to go to a movie set or travel to another part of the country or even other parts of the world to go film. But I get to work from home for the most part. And so I get to walk out, like before I came here, like I was walked out of my office and my kids, where you going, daddy? So I get to always constantly see them throughout the day, especially my 2 little ones. My 2 little ones are, you know, they're too young to be in school, but my 2 older ones, you know, my oldest son goes to a private teacher, so he gets out of school early in the day, so he's pretty much has half days every day because it's just him and the teacher. My second son, he goes to private school, so he gets out like around 3:00. But between them, like I'm after the nanny comes in at 8:00. I see them still throughout the day. And so I'm able to see my motivation throughout the day. And I'm able to, you know, say, you know, bring my kids in my office. Hey, come check this out.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, that's like, one thing I really want to do myself.
Yeah. Like I'm writing this. I finished writing this animated movie that hopefully will get picked up sometime this year. And I was able to bring my kids run into my office. I'm like, hey, check this out. Like, what do you think about this character? What do you think about this artwork that we did for this character? And they're able to see it. And so I bring them into my world. And then when I go work on movies, I'm able to bring them to set. So it's like the compassion is always there, but also they are my motivation. And then at the same time, when I have to be a tough guy because, you know, my kids get out of line or somebody hits somebody or somebody lies, whatever the case may be, then I'm that, but I don't keep it there. Like one thing that I learned when it comes to parenting is that, you know, once your kid is corrected and disciplined, you need to put that away. What I mean by that is you can't always, a minute late, 10 minutes later, you screwed up. 20 minutes later, you screwed up. That's why I did. 30 minutes later, you screwed up. An hour later, 2 hours. It's like, no, hey, as soon as they do what they do and then I discipline them, it's like, hey, I love you. Forget this happened. Just remember, don't do it again. Mm-hmm. And I don't bring it up. And my wife doesn't bring it up. And so, you know, that's part of the compassion as well, because I want them to know that, like, they are not their mistake. You know, they are not their fault, their folly or whatever it is that they did. That's not them. That doesn't define them. You know what I mean? They are my child, and I love them, and they're going to always be loved, and we're going to push through, and we're going to make mistakes, and I'm going to always be here as a father to help pick you up after you make those mistakes, brush you off, and still tell you I love you and keep moving forward. You know?
That's great. And that's great that you can take what you've been through, your childhood, and essentially make a better one for them. I love that. Well, what was that like going from everything to nothing, essentially?
You know, I was so young that it was hard for me to really grasp it, and all credit to my mom. She did a really good job of masking the reality of what had happened, right? So my mom, we grew up in this small apartment in the Bronx, and she kept it pristine. She had brought a bunch of my dad's art, so we had all of these African books and all these African sculptures and paintings and stuff in our house. And you know, when you're small, you know, the world is big.
Yeah.
Like an apartment is big to you. Like now I go back to the apartment that I grew up in, and it's smaller. It's small to me because I'm big, but as a kid, it was like big to me, you know what I mean? And so I say all that to say, you know, I didn't really, between me being a young kid, not fully understanding rich, poor, you know, mansion, like I didn't really understand all of that stuff. Like it was a seamless transition. It wasn't until I got older in life that I began to really see things and hear my mom go to the rent office and ask for an extra 3 days to pay the rent, you know, see crackheads at DeVoe Park strung out, and my mom is not there to tell me, oh, they're just sick. Like, no, I just saw that guy sell them drugs. Like, they're drug addicts, you know what I mean? So as I got older and I began to now really understand what my eyes were seeing, that's when it was like, holy crap, I'm not in Kansas anymore.
And that's probably when you realized like how much of a sacrifice your mom made, right?
Not really. I didn't realize it until I left for the Navy. Wow. In all honesty, like it was like. And I think that happens in a lot of things in life, you know, whether it's a relationship or whether it's, you know, a job. It's like, it's not until you leave that situation, you leave that relationship, or you leave that job, or you leave, that you're able to now reflect and without bias, essentially, right? And I remember when I got to boot camp, my first week of boot camp, I wrote my mom this long letter because I finally began to understand what it meant to be on my own, and began to fully understand, you know, why my mom did what she did and how hard she worked. You know, and I just remember writing my mom this super long letter, and I just told her, I said, Ma, like, I appreciate you. I didn't get it before. I get it now. I love you. Thank you for the sacrifice and everything you did. But while I was in it, I couldn't see it. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Like, leading up to that major change in circumstances in your life. I know, because when I was reading the book, you talked about you went from essentially working a normal job to finding a hole in the system.
And selling drugs, too.
Yeah. And so would you, like... how would you, do you think that was a necessary part of your progression as a person? Like discovering that there are easier ways to go about making it through the system, but it's not the right thing to do.
Oh yeah. Like I'm always been the type of person that I need to test the waters. You know what I mean? I need to get, and then I need to get smacked by a wave for me to finally realize this ain't the right way, right? And so, no, 100%. Like I do not condone what I did, but I am grateful for it. Yeah. You know, because it gave me a lot of skills that I applied to this day. You know, even going back further, like, it taught me skills that I applied in the SEAL teams. Yeah. Right. Because, you know, when I was out hustling, selling drugs and running my cell phone scam and doing all of these nefarious things, like, I had to move in secret. I had to move. It
was a business.
Yeah, it was a business. Yeah. But it was also a very dangerous business that could have landed me in prison. And so I had to learn how to, like, read people. And I had to learn how to, like, you know, okay, I can't go to this place, because it might be too risky to go to this place to hustle. I need to go to this place, or I can't sell this much product. I need to dial back how much product I sell. And all of that came into play when I got into intelligence collection in the SEAL teams. And because I had to know how to read sources, I had to know how to, like, when to push, when not to push. I had to know when to move, where to move, when not to move, and all of those things. I remember being in I won't say the name of the course, but I'll just call it a tradecraft course. And they were teaching all of these theories and utilizing all of these terms in the classroom. And I was just like, I've been doing all of this stuff. I just didn't know the term. Yeah, I've been doing all of this stuff in the Bronx, right? And so, no, I'm definitely grateful. And I needed to be crushed. I needed to ride the edge, and because, no one could have told my mom, and looking back, I say this all the time, there was nothing that my mom could have said that would have changed my path. And I deal with a lot of inner cities kids and different programs. I have a charter school up in Muskegon, Michigan, and I've been to prisons, and I worked in the human trafficking space. I do a lot of different things. And there are people, when I see them and I see the look in their eyes, I know there is nothing I can say that's going to change their path.
The first thing I want to say is I really appreciate how honest you are about your journey. Because I think a lot of people think they need to act like they have no faults, no errors. They need to come off as perfect. But at least for me, the people that I've always respected and admired the most are the ones who are completely honest with their entire journey. So I think it helps a lot of people that you say, like, I was in this really bad situation and I got out, so you can get out too. And
exactly.
That kind of leads into the question is, how do you help those people who have kind of taken the bad route in life? I know you said sometimes you could just tell that they're not able to help.
Yeah. I mean, I could use an example. When I was in the SEAL teams, early on in my career, I met a guy at the church I was going to, and he said, "Hey, this woman I used to date, she has a son that's about to go to prison. He's in jail right now." And he was like, she asked if you can go talk to him. So I said, sure. So I went to the county jail, and this guy didn't know who I was. And I walk in, and there's the glass, and there's all of these prisoners behind the glass, and it's like family members and friends on my side of the glass. And I was in my uniform and everything, and I tried talking to him. He was just like staring at me, stonewall, like didn't care. And then after a while, I just got up and left, right? And I was like, all right, cool. What I did, though, was I would just like write him, like, hey, bro, like, just want to say hello, think about you. For years. I mean, as a matter of fact, when he finally got out of prison, he showed me he kept all of the letters that I wrote him.
Wow.
And
were you one of the only people that
I was one of the only people. I was one of the only. Wow. But it was me and his mom, and his son. Like, he had a son. He still has a son. His son's older now, but his son was in my wedding. So while he's in prison, his son is in my wedding. So I kind of even took his son. I would pick up his son and take him to Dave & Buster's and do stuff like that. I just consistently kind of loved him from afar. Didn't put pressure on him. Didn't say, you need to change, you need to stop. Because he went into prison, got out, did something again, and went back to prison. And despite all of that, like, knowing myself and knowing him and seeing myself in him, I knew that I needed to wait until he was fully primed. And so all I did was stay in his life. And then finally, it got to the point where he saw that, man, this guy actually cares about me, where he was like, yo, man, I need you to guide me. I'm ready to listen. And dude's doing good now, bro. Like, he's out here in San Diego now. He has these, he's building these homes for guys who get out of prison. And he's about to do a contract with the state, county, whatever it is, where, as soon as a guy gets out of prison, they stay in this, it's like a rehabilitation transitioning house, I think is what they call it. But he wasn't that person before, and a lot of who he is and why he is right now, he looks at me like a father.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? So to answer your question, it's like, when I see somebody, or when you see somebody that's like, it's clear that there's nothing you can say to them, don't completely write them off. Just love them from afar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then as time, their heart will soften. And when everybody's gone, all the people that's hustling and doing all the bad stuff around them are gone or in prison or dead, and you're still there, they'll come to you.
Yeah, but I like how you said that. They need to be able to listen. I think that's big. And
yeah.
The reason I ask that is because I'm trying to figure that out myself. I have no one in that bad of a situation, but I have friends and family members who, I would describe them as lost.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. Like, I want to help them.
Yeah.
I want everyone around me to be, grinding, getting after it, happy, most importantly. And I've been struggling with that myself. How do I force the horse to drink, right?
Yeah, you can.
And I kind of figured, like, maybe if I just act the best way I can, maybe they'll see it, and one day.
Well, that's part of it, but but one thing, you can never force anybody. Yeah. I think anytime you force somebody that just makes them worse, because in our nature, it's just in our human nature to rebel.
Yep.
Right. And so anytime we try to force or keep talking somebody into doing the right thing, they're going to do the complete opposite. You know what I mean? And so like I said, I think that it's and the example is a part of it. That's a huge part of it, because if I was like, and that was one thing that the guy who I was talking about, that's one of the reasons why he eventually came back to me and was like, yo, can you help me? Like, I want to listen now. It's because he was able to see for years that, this is a stand-up dude. Like, he's in the military. He has a wife. Like, I knew him before I even had met my wife. Yeah. Like, he's had a wife. He has a family. He has this. He had that. And he's a stand-up dude. I'm not trying to, be prideful or anything like that. But that's his words. And so part of it is the example, because you can't try to talk somebody into doing good when you're doing a bad example. Sure. I have this conversation with a friend of mine all the time, because he has a kid, and he wants his kid to do certain things the right way, but this dude is just a savage. And I'm like, yo, bro, like, how could you expect to tell your kid not to do this bad thing when you doing 10,000 bad things in front of your kid all the time? That's like hypocrisy. And so a big part of it is the example, but another part of it is, I don't think it's right to just cast them on. It's just like, it could be as simple as a text message. Hey, just want to just drop
unconditional love.
Yeah, say I love you.
Wow.
Say hello. Boom. Yeah. Week 3-4 weeks. Hey, just checking in. Not looking for a reply. Just, yo, I'm here if you need anything. Love you. Boom. It's just simple things like that. And people remember those things. Just like I was listening to something the other night as it related to parenting. And it's like, kids won't remember the Nerf gun or the the water gun or the doll or the Barbie set or the electric or the remote control car. They won't remember those things. They won't even remember them like 2-3 weeks after Christmas. Yeah, they'll be broken in. But what they'll remember are those loving things that you did. Showing up to their game, or inviting them into the office to show them the script, or bringing them to a movie set, or bringing them up on stage with you and telling people, hey, this is my son, this is my kid, or you're taking them to a restaurant and putting your arm around them in the movie, or taking time away from a business meeting instead of saying I'm busy, I'm in the meeting, take time to look them in the eye and be like, hey, what's going on? Those are the things that they remember, and those are the things that stick with them. And when they go wayward, if they go wayward, I know. Like, if my kids go wayward or do something crazy, and I know that eventually they're gonna come back, because they're gonna remember, dude, dad always cared about me. And so that's how I try to approach being an aid and an asset to people who are just in really, really dark places.
That's great. And I've never heard someone word it that way, but I feel like that's perfectly said. And things don't matter. I think a lot of parents, they make good money, and they think they're setting a good example by like giving their kids lots of things when it really doesn't matter at all. And I'm sure you learned a lot about being a leader, obviously, in the SEAL teams. Mm-hmm. So I want to shift conversation to there a little bit. That's a big change, right? From where you were going right into that. I know that's really what you wanted to do. You set your mind to it. You said, I'm going to become a SEAL. Yeah. Everyone's heard the stories of how crazy, how hard Buds is, how weak. And so I don't want to bug you with like specific questions about that, except for just one. What was the closest you ever came to quitting in that process?
I never.
Really?
Yeah, okay. I don't feel like I ever came close to quitting. I came close to failing evolutions, and I failed, timed evolutions, my time swims and a tread, but never. For me, it was just like I got to either die or get kicked out. There was no quitting. You know what I mean? I know some people say, well, you know, every guy crosses every guy's mind, but I had nothing left. I had a deep-rooted emotional reason why I wanted to make it, and that was I had failed so much in life I didn't want to fail anymore. And so, like, yeah, it didn't come.
That's awesome. That's perfect. Yeah. What about the other guys that you trained with, the other guys that ultimately became team members? What do you think some common characteristics amongst those guys were? Best of the best, essentially.
There are none. I mean, that's something that the Navy has been trying to figure out for a number of years, like, you know, over 2 decades. Like, why is it that 300 men show up and only 14 to 25 make it? Like, because that costs a lot of money. When you have 300 guys or 250 or 270 men who you're feeding 270 people every day, you're clothing 270 people every day. The water costs money. Like, it's not free. It's very expensive. And so they've been trying to figure out how do we better vet who comes into the program so that we can increase our graduation rates, because the attrition rates historically have been between 80 and 90%.
Yeah.
And nobody can figure it out. I mean,
Wow.
I think one year they said, oh, we think that it's people from the Northeast. And then that same year, like, a bunch of people from the Southwest made it through. You know what I mean? And then, maybe it's people that play water sports. Well, nah, because a lot of those guys that play water sports didn't make it, but these guys, like, I never played water sports. You know what I mean? So it's like, and I think that the reason why it's historically been that way, and I think it'll always be that way, is because you can't tell what's in a person's heart. You know what I mean? All I know is from, you know, what it comes back down to is, like, what is in your heart? Do you have that unmitigated drive within you to push? Not when you're 100%, when you're like 10%. When you have, like, stress fractures in your legs, when you have blood in your lungs because you have pneumonia, when you've been shot. I mean, just look at the guys as it relates to the lone survivor story. Like, you know, those guys were shot up, you know what I mean? And they just kept on fighting for one another. All right. And then only one guy survived, but that was Marcus Luttrell. But they were shot up, but still kept on fighting. When you look at stories like Black Hawk Down and so many of these other, like, very, just amazing heroine stories, is like what it comes back down to is, like, these guys were, like, down and out. They were outnumbered by a lot of people, bullets flying everywhere, guys injured, but they still kept on going. And you can't measure that in a person's heart.
Yeah.
You know?
I totally understand that, but that's crazy. That's really insightful, because I would have thought that there'd be, some sort of characteristic that you could identify ahead of time, but what about
if they could, then they would be 100%
graduation.
Makes total
sense,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about out of all the guys on day one? You said there's anywhere from 250 to 350 people?
Between 250 and 300, depending on the class, yeah.
When you're looking at all those guys, meeting them for the first time, was there any sense of, like, I think this guy's going to make it, that guy seems like he could handle it, or were you completely surprised?
No, I mean, it's the person you say is going to make it most likely doesn't make it.
Really?
There was a guy in my class, he was a triathlete. When he showed up, all the instructors, even though this is when triathlons first became big, all the instructors knew who he was. Dude could run faster than anybody.
Promising.
Yep. Yeah. This dude could swim faster than everybody. He had no problems on the timed ocean swims, no problems on the 4 mile time runs, no problems on the freaking on the obstacle course, no problems. He quit. He quit the first week.
Wow.
Right. And so, and that's the guy that people will point to be like, yeah, that dude's going to make it. And he doesn't. You know, it's like I said, you can't really, because then there were so many people that pointed at me like, that dude ain't gonna make it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, you know, like I'm not sure how far you got in the book, but you get, but you know, when I get to the part about SEAL training, like all the instructors was like, that dude ain't, there's no way this dude's gonna make it and become a pro man. You know what I mean? Even before I even got to SEAL training, when I was in my first command, people were like, you ain't gonna make it. You're not going to make it.
Did you care about the instructors' opinions at all in terms of, like, I'm going to prove them wrong? Or were you just like, I don't care what they think about me. It
didn't matter for me because, you know, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
And like we call it bullying now. It's so funny. Me and my friends who grew up together, we say, man, if you put kids of this generation in a time machine and took them back to the late 80s and 90s.
I fully agree with you, man.
Suicide rate
my age. Like, I see them.
The suicide rate would be, bro, we were just brutal on each other, man. Like name calling. I mean, I remember the older kids, I talked about this with you on the phone, but the older kids would get chalk and draw like a big boxing ring, like a boxing, and you had to stay in the box. They would chalk out the concrete, and they would bet on the young kids and be like, get in there. We had to slap box fight each other. And we fighting on we playing two-hand touch football on concrete, pushing dudes to the concrete. I mean, we were brutal, calling your mom's this, your mom's that, like all of. I mean, we were brutal. I mean, there's a friend of mine, we call them Dougie Buns, because one day, to this day, we still call him Dougie Buns, and he's 40, right? Because one day he came outside, his dad put him in some super tight jeans. They were so tight, it looked like 2 honey buns, and we destroyed him. We destroyed him so bad, dude went home crying, but at the end of the day, like to this day, we still call him Dougie Buns because of that one day. But he's a strong cat. And so I say all of that to say, when you grow up in an environment like that, man, I was jumped. I was beat up. I mean, I had all kinds of stuff happen to me. I was robbed. Like, when you grow up like that and then you show up to SEAL training and instructors are calling you names, it's just like, all right.
Yeah, it's crazy because you say that and people get so offended and upset by it. And like, that's one thing I talk about a lot is, obviously nothing on your experience, but I got bullied all the time when I was a little kid. I was like the most hated guy in my fraternity when I first joined. I'm very glad that all that happened. It's very like, it's a part of my story building, you know, and people are soft these days. I don't know.
It's a different generation, man. Again, I'm not advocating bullying and all that. Like I'm not, but I can't, like, we didn't call it bullying though. Like it was what I look at it, it was just like, dude, we were just Spartans, bro. We were just hard on each other, you know what I mean? But the cool thing is, like, the group I grew up with, we would fight and do all kinds of crazy stuff. When we would go outside of our community and into a situation where it was from another community, like, dude, and we had to get into a fight or something like that, like,
then you guys were
we were tight. You know what I mean? We were tight, and we like, we would fight to the death for each other, and we had the training, you know. So I mean, it's you know, my kids, they don't deal with bullying. I'm
sure you tell them though if someone fucks with you, like you.
100%. Right? And on that note too, I'll tell them you better not bully either.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like this is not a house of bullies. Like we don't play that. At the same time, though, I do like challenge them. You know, especially my sons, like, hey, like, dude, you ain't about to be soft, bro. You know what I mean? Like, you ain't about to cry because I took away I turned off the TV because you've been watching 2 hours, 3 hours of TV. Nope. Oh, if you're going to cry, you're going to lose TV for a freaking month. You know what I mean? That's not something to cry about, you know? So, like, I do try to give them, like, controlled toughness so that, you know, when they grow up, they're ready for it. Because, I mean, you know, man, the world is not easy. This is a freaking harsh, hard world. And I think, you know, and the suicide rates, like, have been going up exponentially. You know what I mean? Why is that? Because it's and it's just getting harder. And a big part of that is social media. And how, like, social media has just brainwashed so many kids into thinking that they should have things instantaneously, like Instagram. Like, they see people with the luxury car, or this great life, or the mansion, or makeup, all this other stuff, and they don't realize a lot of that is fake. You know, people are fronting. They just rented that, you know, for a quick shoot. But two, like, if that's real, they did earn it. It took them years to earn that. And I think social media has kind of warped the minds of so many, not just young people, but people in general, into believing that I need to start this job or I need to do this and then end up here in like 2 minutes. Yeah. And when that doesn't happen, they shut down. Yeah. And so, you know, one thing that I try to deal with my kids now is like time. Things take time. You know, like my second son will always ask me, like, how much more time do you get off, Dad? How much more time do you get off, Dad? How much more time do you get? Like every 5 minutes, I'm like, yo, don't do that. Don't do that. Things take time. And you got to learn how to be patient and wait. And guess what? If you think something is supposed to happen by 4:30, you better be prepared for it not to happen by 4:30. In the case it happens at 5:30, 6:30, in the case it may happen 12 hours or 24 hours later, because if you're expecting something to happen in a certain day and a certain time and it doesn't happen and you're not prepared for that, you're going to shut down. And so I try to set my kids up, in a very controlled environment so that they understand that life is hard and things will not come to you fast. Like my kids, in order to freaking watch a movie on Friday night, they got like a whole list of chores that they have to do, right? Like we don't just hand them stuff. Like in order for my kids to be able to go to Dave & Buster's, we got this like trivia thing that we do, and they have to read and study so that so they earn a certain amount of points. Once they earn that number of points, then we can go to Dave & Buster's, then we can go to a movie, then we can go do something like that. Well, what I'm trying to train them is nothing is given in life. Everything is earned. You got to go out, earn it, and it's going to take time. And it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I think,
not even, especially things, but, people will probably hate me for this, but I was suicidal when I was a little kid. I was a pussy, right? Yeah. And I got very close to doing it. Once again, I was bullied, and my life sucked, right? Or I felt like it did. In comparison with other people's stories, not at all, looking back on that. But what I realized is like, why do I feel like I'm entitled to having all the things I want right now? Whether it is something physical like a watch or a car, or that perfect relationship, or that level of confidence. Why do I deserve to be confident? What have I done? And so I kind of like looked at it as like I need to figuratively kill this pussy current version of me, and then build this ideal one that I'm looking towards. And I think part of the problem with like rising suicide rates these days is kind of people say like, oh, it's okay to be sad. It's quitting. It's fucking quitting. You
100%.
need to put the work in. To get
100%. 100%. It is quitting, and it's like so many people don't want to do the work, bro. That's why I think like people like you, especially your generation, like you already got the edge. Once you get that lesson, that it's like I just got to keep doing the work. I'm going to get rejected.
It's addicting too.
Yeah, it's man, bro.
It's like playing the video game in real life.
Dude, I love having a hard life, bro. Like I love having a hard, like the craziest thing for me is like when things are going good for me, that's when I mess up. That's when I make mistakes. Like I've learned that I thrive in fire. And every single day, especially the business I'm in as a filmmaker, every single day is hard. You know what I mean? And then I got 4 kids, and then I got an apparel company, and then I got a consulting company, and then I got like people trying to steal IP from me, then I got people lying to me. And like every single day is hard. Then I got to get up early. It's like, but I thrive in that. And dude, the fire is freaking the fire is good. And one thing I tell young people all the time when they say like, how can I build mental toughness? I'm like, do hard things. Like, do hard. What do you mean by that? Okay, if you have a freaking paper that's due in 2 months, do it in two days.
Yeah.
Stay up, like, condition yourself. So when you find yourself in a situation when you got to do something really hard in 2 days in order to get the deal, in order to get the job, it's like, oh, I remember I did that a few years ago in college. I could do that now. And I think that so many of us have lost this. I don't know how it happened. I think parenting is a big part of it, but so many people have lost the art of putting their kids in controlled, safe, hard, consistently hard situations.
Yeah. Like you're not going to physically die or get hurt, but
you're not going to physically die or get hurt.
You need to train them to
understand. You need to be challenged.
The concept. Yeah.
You need to be challenged. Nobody's taking their kids out into the woods and saying, dude, it's going to suck. Your cell phone's going to stay in the car or stay at the house. We're going to go out to this camp and we're going to make fire. We're going to live in a tent and it's going to suck. And it's going to be probably raining, but it's going to suck. That used to happen a lot back in the day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And doing those things will prepare the kids for when life gets hard. So they're not like, oh, I want to kill myself. Like, why you want to kill? Like, I read so many stories, man, about kids and not just kids, but young adults that kill themselves and then get to the root of it. And I'm just like, what it was. And it wasn't mental illness. It was just something was like, man, come on.
One thing didn't work out. Yeah, there is mental illness for sure.
100%.
And people, and that's a problem. And that the solution to that, I don't even know what it is. But I know that most of the people that are depressed do not have mental illness. And I was one of them. I didn't have a mental illness. I was just soft.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I figured it out as soon as I did. But I'm curious, because of how hard your childhood was and then SEAL training.
The one thing I'll say real quick, I'm sorry to cut you off, is that like we live in a world where we have our imagination. And I think that so many people create these outcomes and hold to those outcomes as far as what they think is going to happen. So like, it's like God to them. Like, this is going to be the outcome. Example, my boyfriend broke up with me. I loved him. I was with him for 5 years or whatever the case may be. And he broke up with me. I will never find somebody like that again. I will never find somebody that's going to love me like that again. I will always be lonely for the rest of my life. And it's just like, that's the outcome. That's their imagination has created this outcome. And now that they're seeing this outcome, the chances of that outcome happening are slim to none.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I want to, one thing that they teach us in SEAL training is the 4 pillars of mental toughness. And, one of them is visualization, which deals with imagination, visualizing a goal. We see athletes do that. Just take basketball, for example.
Well, like crossing the finish line?
Yeah.
Game-winning shot, whatever.
Or shooting a free throw. Before they shoot the free throw, they dribble, mimic shoot. So it tricks your mind, like, kind of unconsciously tricks your mind into believing that it's been done already. You're seeing the ball go through the hoop. So that's visualization. Arousal control, which is a way to calm yourself. Everybody has different ways of calming themselves down. We just have to find what works for us. Goal setting, which setting incremental real goals, eating the elephant one bite at a time, and visualizing those incremental goals so that when you reach that goal, it boosts your confidence, and you reach the next incremental goal, boosts your confidence even more. The big one is positive self-talk. And I think that that's for me, I think that that's the most important pillar of mental toughness is positive self-talk. And it's essentially talking to yourself in a positive way. All of us talk to ourselves all day long. We do. But the majority of what we say to ourselves are negative. Even if it's like, dang, I'm going to be late for this podcast, and then, like, you know what I mean, and I'm going to piss off the studio, and money has been spent and all this other stuff, when it's like, we create, like, a lot of what we do is negative self-talk. And so, in my opinion, I think a lot of the culprit for suicide is a lot of just negative self-talk. People haven't learned how to freaking bombard the negative self-talk with positive self-talk. And they allow the negative self-talk to create, like I said, these outcomes, these scenarios that will most likely never happen. And they hold to them so strongly that it's like, well, that's not going to happen, so I need to go away. And it's not going to happen. Like, if there's only one message somebody gets out of this podcast, that false scenario that you created is not going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's not, Well,
why even predict? I feel like life is also much more fun when you just say, like, I really liked how you kind of talked about the time thing earlier, because time doesn't really exist. It's not real. Yep. It's just something we made up. But if you give yourself, like, I'm going to have this by this time, it doesn't really make sense at all. But if you just say, I'm going to do this every day, I'm going to work towards this goal, and I don't know when it's going to happen. That's what I've been trying to practice a lot myself, is like, okay, I really want my podcast to hit 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
I don't know when it's going to happen, but I'm going to work every single week until I get there. I don't know. It might take a year. It might take 10 years.
Yeah.
I think it'll be sooner than later, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I'm just not going to stop until I get there.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a very positive way of thinking. It helps me a lot.
Yep.
I'm curious, because of how hard, like, for example, SEAL training was, and then now you're an entrepreneur and a film writer, and is this stuff easy to you? it's obviously a much different skill.
No.
But you know, like, you can accomplish anything now that you've been through that, right?
No, yeah, no, it's not easy. I know I can accomplish it, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because, dude, I could write the greatest script on the face of the planet, and it can be incredibly hard to get that movie made. Somebody else can write the worst script on the face of the planet and it get made. Yeah. Like, Hollywood it's a very, very interesting place. It's more about who you know, and it's more about who knows you. It's not about who you know in Hollywood. It's about who knows you, right? And who's willing to invest in you. And that's why you see so many bad movies, because those filmmakers had people who knew who they were and was just like, yeah, let's go ahead and go make this movie. So that's why it's a challenging environment. And SEAL training, like, freaking, I could, run my 4-mile time run, and the passing time is 32 minutes and 31 minutes. I could do my 2-mile time ocean swim, and the passing time is 85 minutes and 82 minutes. I could do the obstacle course. The passing time is, I don't remember, 12 minutes. I could do it in like 11 minutes, and then do that consistently for 3 weeks, and make it through Hell Week and advance to the next phase of training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you know what the goal is, and there's like steps to get there.
Exactly.
Sure. Whereas this is just like,
this
you gotta
is
figure
different.
it out.
This is different. You know what I mean? And so, case in point, the project, I had a meeting today on a project that's supposed to be going into production next year, and we've come to find out we've spent a whole year wasting time on a specific strategy that essentially set us back. And it could be frustrating. I could throw a tantrum about it, but at the end of the day, it's like, no, well, we figured out what the problem was. We got some new team members on board. We're going to now move forward in this proper direction, right? But it's still hard. Mm-hmm. It's still hard. And I can't say when this film is going to go into production, but I know that I'm going to keep busting my butt to get there. So to answer your question, it's hard. Making it through SEAL training, being a SEAL, going overseas and operating, doing all the crazy stuff that I did, and then, like, it doesn't make life easier.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, like, it's so funny because me and my business partner, he's about 27 years old, and we had this conversation sometimes. We're like, dude, why are we even in this business? Like, we could be crushing it in every other business. Like,
and you're talking about the clothing business, right?
No, we're talking about the filmmaking. Yeah. He's a filmmaker as well. And it's like, why are we doing this? It's like, dude, because we know that we're on the right path. Because if it was easy, then we'd be on a wrong path. And
you're also in the storytelling business, which I feel like can have the greatest impact.
100%. That's
what your goal is.
And that's my primary reason for being in the filmmaking business and telling stories, is to impact people. My belief is that if somebody's going to invest an hour in a TV show or 2 hours in the film, that's an investment, which means they should get something out of that investment. And so I don't believe in telling stories or making films or TV shows that people watch and just check out and forget like 5 minutes later. Yeah. Like the film that I'm supposed to be directing this upcoming year, it's a film about organ harvesting. And I did a short film called The Unexpected that's on YouTube, and that film was about organ harvesting. A bunch of people watched that film, was just like, dude, this should be a feature film.
Is that part of the human trafficking industry?
Yeah, that's part of the human trafficking. Yeah, that's part of the human trafficking. So when people hear human trafficking, their mind just goes to sex trafficking. Human trafficking is the blanket term, but there's so many different subsets under human trafficking. You got organ harvesting, sex trafficking, forced labor, forced marriage, and the list of people being used as mules to traffic drugs. I mean, and the list goes on and on and on, different way people are trafficked and enslaved. And so I decided to focus, 2 years ago, my storytelling efforts on organ harvesting, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry and it's grossly underreported. A lot of people don't talk about it because a lot of people, frankly, don't know how to talk about it. And so I figured, let me tell a story. And I told that story, and it had a great impact. I get people that reach out to me from all over the world saying, I didn't know that this existed. I didn't know this happened. I'm getting involved in some way with a local, in my community, or with a local nonprofit to try and do something about stopping it. And that was the reason why I told that story. I didn't tell that story for it to be a big movie, but now it's going to be a big movie. Yeah. And the reason why I'm focusing my efforts on this big movie is so that it can have more, even bigger impact, right? Mm-hmm. Because most people won't read a book about human trafficking or organ harvesting. Most people won't read newspaper articles. They won't watch documentaries about it. But what they will do is they we'll go sit down in a movie theater and spend 2 hours watching a movie about it, right? And so everything that I do, whether it's my book Transformed, even like I didn't want to write Transformed because, it's very, how might I put this, taboo to guys from my community, special operations community, write books. And so it took a lot of people convincing me, hey, you got an incredible story. It's not about you trying to glorify what you did in the SEAL teams. It's about you sharing your story in order to impact people. And that was the reason why I ended up writing the book, was because I was like, man, if one person picks up this book and the trajectory of their life is changed, then I've done my job as a storyteller. And I get messages from more than one thing. Like every week I'm getting messages like I didn't know that I could do this. Like it changed my whole life. Like I found faith again. I get so many different messages from people, and that's the purpose of storytelling for me. That's my only goal as a storyteller, is to motivate, inspire, and educate somebody in some way and make them look at themselves differently, or maybe make them look at their circumstance that they've projected differently so they don't do what we talked about earlier. On
really important issues too, and I love that.
Yep.
How do you even get introduced into the human trafficking or organ harvesting industry? Like, how did you find out about it? Was that something that happened in training?
No. So when I got out of the Navy in 2016, and I was in grad school. I was getting my master's in business organizational strategy, and I just had a bunch of different people, nonprofits were reaching out to me because my story had kind of went public about me going from Africa and royalty and rich to poor and the Bronx. And so there were a lot of different people that found out about my story, and they were just like, a lot of them worked for nonprofits. It's like, hey, can you come speak at this event?
Yeah, this guy can help.
Yeah, can you come to this prison? Like I went to prisons, like share your story with the inmates. Nobody ever comes to the prisons to visit the inmates. Can you come and just, share your story? And so I had a lot of that happen. One of the type of nonprofits that consistently reached out to me were human trafficking nonprofits, and the first one was out of Sacramento, and they said, hey, can you come up and we're doing a fundraiser, can you help out with the fundraiser? I didn't know what human trafficking was, and so I was like, sure. I went up there, learned a lot about human trafficking. I was like, crap, this is crazy. I didn't even know what human trafficking was. And then another human trafficking nonprofit reached out, another one, and then finally a human trafficking nonprofit reached out that utilizes former special operations guys and former intelligence guys and three-letter agencies to go overseas and to rescue kids trapped in sex trafficking rings, but also bring to justice Americans who go to these foreign countries to have sex with underage kids.
Yeah, it's just as bad.
Oh yeah, it was. Oh my God.
So you're funding the business, the industry.
Well, the interesting thing is America drives the demand for content that's created with traffic victims, specifically especially child pornography. America drives the demand for it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we're driving the demand. And when you look at organ harvesting, you're getting a lot of Westerners, Americans, who are traveling to other parts of the world to purchase organs on the black market from traffic victims. So
I'm assuming it's foreigners that are paying the price due to the greed and this disgusting
and the poverty
of Americans.
Yep,
right?
And the poverty of people in the countries, right? So, for example, the trip that really pushed me into utilizing my skill set as a filmmaker to talk about this was a trip I took down to DR, and we were in this slum in the southern part of DR, where the parents would sell their daughters to traffickers, and the traffickers would take their daughter. We're talking like 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old girls.
In this community? Was this one family? It was a slum. Like a community?
It was a slum. It was a slum of people. Wow. And I remember being in this slum, and I was just father of 2 boys, but still, like I have a heart for kids in general. And our guide saw that I was perturbed, to say the least. And our job was essentially to educate the parents as to why they shouldn't sell their daughters. So that was hard. That was our specific.
I'm sure inside you're
Yeah, that was our
I just want to kill this guy or something.
Well, not because they're the parents, right? So that was our mission, right? And so our guide took me into this, so that I was perturbed, took me into this chapel that was no bigger than the size of 2 toilet stalls. And at the end of the chapel was a dead 6-month-old baby in a casket. And it was a funeral service. And the guide said to me the reason why the baby died was because the mother mixed formula. She ran out of breast milk because she wasn't getting enough food, so her breast milk ran out. And so she mixed formula with the local water, and that's what ultimately killed the baby. And essentially what he was trying to do was use that situation to teach me, to help me. And I don't even want to use the word understand or empathize, but help me to kind of like do my job better, right? And so he was essentially telling me that this was the plight. Either the parents sell one of their daughters and all of their kids survive and live, or, the parents don't sell their daughters and then their kids die.
All of them die.
And he was like, that's the wall that they're up against. And so it helped kind of my wheels turn, and it helped me to better communicate to the parents. So when I got back from that trip, I had landed in Miami, and I had a bunch of missed calls from Michael Bay's producing partner, Mike Case, because I had worked with Michael Bay on a film called Transformers, and then the last night with Transformers 5, and then he was starting his next film, which was 6 Underground, and he wanted me to work on the film as a consultant. And I called Case back, and he told me, he's like, hey, where you been? We've been trying to get a hold of you. Can you start working tomorrow? I was like, dude, I got to fly from here to Texas. I was like, give me a week. But long story short, after I got off the call, it was like these 2 worlds collided. The world of filmmaking and the world of human trafficking. Because in my mind, I was just like, wow, this is such a global issue. It's just like, you go outside and it's like freaking 1,000 ants, and you step on one and it's still like 1,000 more. That's what human trafficking is. It's up like 100 billion. When we talk about every aspect of human trafficking, it's $100 billion+ industry globally. I think it's like 135 billion globally.
I saw some statistic that said it was more valuable in terms of revenue every year than
the drug trade.
Yeah, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's freaking nuts. And so just thinking, oh my God, like when I went down in DR, it was just like freaking not even lighting a match compared to a blazing fire. It's like nothing. Yeah, we did something, but it was nothing in comparison to all of this stuff that's going on around the world, globally, in this country. Like in America, there's so many stories of like people getting busted in these sex trafficking rings and forced labor rings and even organ harvesting rings. Like it's just nuts. And it's just like, dude, like how can you stop this? And I was just like, well, it's a global issue. It requires a global response. How do you create the global response? Through film. Yeah. Through film, because just like it was a cartoon when we were growing up. How old are you, Linda? 23. Oh, so you're the same age as G.I. Joe. There was a saying, "No one is half the battle," right? And so, like the way so many people don't know, like I didn't know what human trafficking was, and like so many people are just oblivious to it all, especially organ harvesting. So, how can you get them engaged? You got to educate them. How can I better educate them through film? Yeah. And so that's kind of how I got into.
I think that's the best. I fully agree. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I have a question. Having seen what you've seen in those situations, that one specifically, anything you might have seen in battle, do you think that some people are just evil, or is every single person just a product of their environment? Like they just grew up and they were pushed into a life of crime or being a drug lord or a terrorist, or
I think it's all different. I think I think it's all different. I think every person is different. I think there are people who you get a lot of people who just abuse as kids, man, and hurt people. Of
course.
That's just the reality of it. And when you're raised, I was at my school up in Muskegon, Michigan. I told you earlier I started a charter school up in Muskegon, Michigan. I was there about 3 weeks ago. And I went into one of the classes, and Muskegon, Michigan is a very impoverished, it's a lot of poverty. As a matter of fact, when the kids signed up, they had to show their birth certificates. And I would say like 90% of the kids didn't even have a father's name on the birth certificate, right? So we're talking about single parent epidemic in this particular area, and crime and poverty also. So, well, I walked into the second grade classroom. Visiting, I was doing a talk, talking to every classroom, and I asked the kids. We're talking about college and school because we have a program set up where every kid that does a minimum of 3 years and finishes the 5th grade at our school gets an automatic scholarship to the university in the area.
That's awesome.
Right?
Love that.
Because we're accredited through the university. And so I said to the kids, who wants to go to college? And every kid but one kid raised their hand. There's one black boy. He didn't raise his hand. And I was going to move on, but then something said, like, ask that kid what's going on. So I pointed to the kid. I said, don't you want to go to college? And he didn't say anything. He was literally like leaned on a chair, like facing me, just like with his face on the chair like this. Like that was it. Like he was just leaning on a chair like this. And I said, don't you want to go to college? And without making a sound, like streams of tears just started like coming down his eyes. Like streams of tears started. And he's not making a sound. He's just like, I was just like, wow, like something's going on with this kid. So I said to him, I said, what's going on, buddy? Like, don't you want to go? What's wrong? He said, I can never go to college because I ain't got no money. And I'm never going to have no money to go to college, to do anything, to be anybody. And he was crying as he's saying this. And I was like, damn, long story short, I talked to the kid and told him, hey, you know what? I'm glad you were vulnerable. I'm glad that you opened up because because you're a strong man. I said, you're a strong, smart man, because it takes a strong, smart man to be willing to open up and be vulnerable and cry in front of other people. And then I said, you ain't got to worry about college. And then my co-founder at school said, yeah, man. He said, your college is already paid for, bro, as long as you get your grades up. He's like, why? I said, see, you created something in your mind, like we were talking about earlier, that doesn't even exist. This kid was so convinced that he wasn't going to go to college that he broke down crying, didn't even raise his hand. How many people, again, like we were talking about earlier, create these outcomes that are not going to happen? And I said, see, you created this outcome, son, that your college paid for.
They're just missing opportunity because they don't know how to look for it.
Exactly. But the main point why I bring this up was after all of that happened, I said to myself, I said, damn, who's talking to this kid? Like the kid's 7 years old. How is he able to put 2 and 2 together and say, I'm not going to be able to do X because I don't have money? Like, how do you even have that type of because somebody is putting something in his head. Whether it's a parent, whether it's an older, you ain't got no money. You ain't never going to go nowhere. You ain't got this. You ain't got that. And that's forming that kid into what he could potentially become. And if a person like me in our school didn't come along and say, that's bullshit, you going to school because your school is paid for, then what's going to happen 2 years from now, 3 years? He drops out, doesn't put the effort into school because it's like, I'm never going to be able to get into college anyway. Then he ends up selling drugs, ends up doing this. Well, it's because I would never be able to go to college and do nothing with my life anyway. So going back to your question, it was what was instilled in that kid that potentially sent him down a path. And what me and my business partner did was we corrected him and put him back on the right path. And that's where a lot of evil comes from and a lot of evil acts come from. You get kids at a very young ages that are creating these outcomes and that don't have the guidance, and they're going down this dark path, and it just keeps growing and evolving and getting bigger and bigger before you know it, they're doing what they're doing. Case in point, there's a horrible story that came out like about a month and a half ago. It was a guy riding his bike in Las Vegas or Nevada, Henderson, I believe, and It was these two kids.
Oh,
they
I know
stole
what you're talking
cars.
about. Wasn't it like a retired police chief?
Yeah, bro, retired police chief. Yeah, and it was these two kids. That
was horrible. I saw that video.
Yeah, they're riding around, blasting music. They stole the car that they were in, and they're crashing into other cars, just hitting random people. And in the video, he's like, yeah, hit that dude right there, hit that dude, and they run over him and kill him. And both of them ain't got dads in their lives. Come to find out later, because they're getting tried as adults. One of the kids got tattoo on his face, and that's evil. To just like kill somebody who's minding their own business, not doing anything. Just how did that happen?
Yeah, it makes you think. What had to happen? What series of events did happen or didn't happen to turn someone into someone who would want to?
Exactly.
I'm actually very. It's interesting. It's like just trying to understand that, and not just because you can't fix the problem unless you understand the problem.
Exactly. So I think that when it comes to evil, I think it's very nuanced, but I think that it starts at a young age, man. It starts at a young age, and if you don't deal with certain things with a kid, they don't have a loving parents, bro. That's what it comes back to, like loving parents, man. You know, the greatest gift that that parents can give their kids are two loving parents. Yeah, that's the greatest gift. And when you don't have that there, man, that's when the evils come out. The evils come out. And so I think that that's where evil comes from. And even looking like a lot of the guys that I went after when I was overseas, I went after some evil dudes. I remember one dude I was going after, he would take kids, young boys, and he would use them as suicide bombers. He would brainwash them. He was a big Al-Qaeda guy. He would brainwash them and tell them that they're going to get all of these things when they go to heaven, paradise, and he would just pour all of this
pure evil,
just this horrible stuff into these kids, and then these kids would go out into a market, go out to a mosque, and blow themselves up and kill a bunch of people. And so where were the parents? You know what I'm saying? And then the parents are living in fear because they're in this place. Well, if you don't let your son go to this dude, then you're considered a traitor and you're going to get killed. So I think a lot of it all comes back to parenting, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, man, you are making such a difference with your storytelling, with your experience, just being a better person yourself. I'm very interested how you balance being humble with also, what you've achieved is so grand. And I feel like every time I achieve something in my life, I get a little bit more confident. Maybe even sometimes I get a little cocky. I'm trying to fix that myself. And I feel like part of being a great teacher is having that humility, being humble. I'm very curious. How do you balance that as a person?
It's just understanding that pride goes before the fall. You know what I mean? And it's happened to so many people. It's happened to myself, where things, like I said earlier, I kind of hinted at it earlier, the worst times for me are when things are going good. And then I have to God crushes me, bro, in some way, or takes something from me in some way. And then I'm able to, and then I sit in the freaking muck and the mire, and I'm just like, crap, dude, I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. So I think that, for me, it's like looking at past events, things that have happened to me in the past where, I was feeling myself a little bit too much. And then looking at other people who, got so high and then they just got out of control. And now they've lost absolutely everything. And so I think that it's that constant reflection, that honest reflection and that honest assessment of myself. And then also having good, honest people around me who are not yes men and yes women, who are like, yeah. That's what, my wife is really good at challenging me. My wife is really good at you probably shouldn't have said that, or you probably shouldn't have said it this way. Really? Yeah, you should. And instead of being like, no, you're wrong. No, let me listen. Let me listen. There's a really good book that me and my wife, I finished it. My wife is still reading it. It's called You're Not Listening. Bro, Life. It's a fantastic book about listening. And so I think that it's a combination of reflecting on my past, taking an honest assessment on a daily basis of myself, and ask myself, yo, are you getting a little bit too big for your britches? All right, we need to dial it back. Or maybe, hey, do you think you should have said, you said something to somebody the wrong way, you think you should go apologize? Because that takes humility. Yeah. When you say something, whether it's out of emotion, whether it's out of anger, whether it's out, whatever the case may be, you say something that you shouldn't say in the heat of the moment. All right, got it. Involuntary manslaughter. But then when you get that time where you reflect and you're just like, wow, the humility comes from, yo, let me go back to that person and tell them I'm sorry.
Yeah, and kind of like earlier with the whole perfection thing. And I think a lot of people are like not okay admitting they're wrong.
Yeah.
Because it makes them, they think, especially as leaders, that's what I've learned. A lot of people think like, as a leader, if I admit to being wrong or if I backtrack a little bit, like that makes me look weak.
Yeah.
I actually think it's the exact opposite.
100%.
It's like if you say, I was totally wrong, you're right, man.
Yeah.
I feel like that shows your ability to
That
learn.
shows strength. Being vulnerable shows strength. You know, kind of like what I told the kid when he was crying. Like, that shows strength to admit your faults and to admit that, yo, you made a mistake. And it takes humility, but it definitely shows strength. I think, you know, I said this quote a few years ago. I might butcher it, but it takes more strength. What was it? It's something like it takes more strength to admit your faults or to show weakness. Yeah, it takes more strength to show weakness than it does to hide your weaknesses.
Mm-hmm. Fully agree.
It takes way more strength to show weaknesses than it takes to hide weakness, because there's so many big, strong men, women, whatever, that are hiding their weaknesses and they're weak.
Mm-hmm. And they're everywhere. It's like a pandemic, honestly. Yeah. I think more so than ever right now.
Yeah.
With your old teammates, I'm sure, once again, I feel like those guys probably, are you still in contact with a lot of them?
Yeah, 100%.
They check you. I think everybody needs, no matter how big you get, you need people in your life that are going to check you.
Yeah, I got all kinds of people that check me, from great. Like old teammates to family members to friends to business partners. And I tell them, don't be a yes man. Mm-hmm. Don't be a yes woman. I don't need that in my life. I think that those are the worst friends you could have in your life.
Yeah.
Worst people. They will, and like, because secretly, I think that they're, you know, I think secretly and subconsciously they're preying on your demise.
Yeah.
By telling you, yes, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, go see that guy. Yeah, go see that girl. Yeah, go do it. Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, yeah.
Not wanting to piss you off, same thing.
Not wanting to piss you off, or not wanting to hurt your feelings, you know, by telling you the truth. Dude, we need the truth. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And the truth will save us from a lot. There's people like, you know, when it comes to relationships, I get people like, you know, I want to go be with this person, and they want to be with me, and this and that and this, and they'd be perfect. I'm like, don't go be with that person. Sure, everybody's telling me I should be with that. Don't go be with that person. Everybody else is telling me, all right. They go be with that person, they get crushed. And then they're like, you were right.
Yeah, and you like, just as much as you need those types of people in your life, you need to trust them. Yeah. Because if you work on building those relationships and they do tell you like, no, man, you're wrong on this one. Or like, I really don't think you should do that.
Yep.
Even if you fully think that this is the best move, it's obviously your life. You make your own decisions. But it's good to have those people that you trust so much that can tell you something and you can say, you know what, you're probably right.
Yep.
Who would you say your best, who would you say you stay in contact with the most? I know you're friends with Jocko.
Yeah.
Was he on your team or was he on a different
team? So he put my team through what's called workup, trade
nice.
Yeah. He's a good dude, bro. Hardcore. That the same person that he is now.
He got me through a breakup.
Oh, he
about
did?
A year and a half ago. I was watching some video. He goes, move on.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's right.
Bro, I'm telling you, the same person he is now is the same person he was 15, 16, 17 years ago. It's not an act. I remember we would do iAds. He would out on El Central Desert would be 130 degrees. He'd kill half the platoon. Freaking other half of the platoon had to carry the half out that's dead. And you're in the middle of a firefight, and you're hot, and you're having to do proper bounding procedures. And then after that whole thing went down, we'd go into the platoons, into the classroom, and he would debrief it. And everybody that needed to be ripped apart, whether you were the commanding officer of the platoon or whether you were the most, got it all equally. So he's been the same. He is the same cat through and through. I love that dude. I would say my wife, man.
That's great, man. And that,
I would say my wife, bro.
That's how it should be.
Yeah. She's the one that's like, I mean, I'm with her pretty much 24/7. My wife's a doctor, and so she has her schedule of work. But for the most part, like, she's the person I'm with the most. She's my accountability partner. She shoots it to me straight all the time. You know what I mean? And I'm grateful for that. And, we're so different in so many ways, but I think that's necessary because, I need somebody that sees things from a different perspective and from a different lens. And I would say it's my wife, man.
That's great. Like I said, I think it's your partner.
Yeah.
It's your best friend.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people settle too easily these days for maybe it's just looks, or maybe it's they're worried about it's taking too long to find the right person.
Right.
Do you have any advice on that for someone like me or anyone else out there who's on the, I don't know. Yeah, it's such an important decision. And I actually, that's one of the things that I'm trying to understand more, because I would love to get married tomorrow if I found the one.
Yeah,
but I don't even know if I know how to find the one.
Bro, it's the biggest. It's one of the biggest decisions you could ever make in your life, is choosing a partner, choosing a spouse. One, I would just say, take your time, Two, and when I say take your time, I don't mean like don't do anything. I mean like more so like if you meet somebody, take your time to get to know them. You know what I mean? For me, I wanted to find a woman, have standards. That's another thing. There were certain standards that I had. It didn't matter. And, before I got married, my wife is the only woman I've ever been faithful to. So I was a whore before I got married, you know what I'm saying?
I respect you saying that, man.
Yeah, no, straight up I was. I heard a lot of women, dude, and I've been with all kinds of women, most gorgeous women on the face of some fine women. But I say all that to say, like, when I finally freaking got my head in order, and I was like, here are my standards. I don't care how fine a chick is. If she doesn't meet these standards for me, I'm not with it. One of those standards was, I need somebody that's like my mom. And what I mean by that is, if I die, she can still hold it down. And she's not going to try and jump into another relationship in order to survive. She's going to be strong enough to stand on her own 2 feet. That was my big no-go. And so if I met a girl and she was like, oh, I like doing that, I like that, and doing that. And
how do you find that out? Because I fully agree with you. That's what I want to have too. Yeah, how do you even?
Yeah, conversation, man. Sure? Conversation, like asking a lot of questions. Hey, so how were you raised? Like, what are your aspirations? What do you want to do? Oh, you want to do this? Okay, what have you been doing to get on track to be able to do that? Mm-hmm. Like, how much? And so for me, it was easy with my wife because my wife was in residency when I met her. You know what I mean? So, I mean, she had a crazy story. She almost died when she was young of an autoimmune disease, and that's what inspired her to be a doctor, mm-hmm. because she felt like the doctors that were treating her weren't showing the right amount of compassion, and she had a lot of bad experiences with doctors. And she was like, "Dude, I want to be a doctor just so I could be the one in the room that shows the extra compassion when somebody's going through something like I went through." And so she had that vision, and she was just like, I'm gonna follow it. And she went to study biology in college and went to med school, which is hard. And then she went to freaking residency, which was hard. And I'm with her, dude. And what I love, and it was so cool because I was in the SEAL teams when I met my wife, and I would have to go off for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks of training, come back for a week, go for another 3 weeks, and we're dating and all this other stuff. And she wasn't tripping. She was, oh, why you gotta leave? And I knew other guys, team guys who were dating girls, like, why you always gotta leave? I don't want you. And then you come to find out some of them girls are seeing other dudes while, cats are out doing training. And so my wife's mind was always occupied, and she was never tripping. She was like, I know you got your thing to do, and I'm doing my thing. And so that's what I was like, man, and then seeing how how she would work when I went and met her family, and just seeing how she was like a go-getter. go clean up. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. Let's go snowboarding. Let's go do that. And she's like, let's go. Like she was just like on it. I'm like, dude, she's a hard charger.
Did you know that right away? Could you feel it right at the beginning? This is the one, or did that take time?
It took time. It took time, but we got married fast. We got married 5 months after we met.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That's just happening with my sister right now. But I love the guy to death. I think sometimes you just know, but
but the cool thing about it is because she was in residency, and so she was working 12, 14, 16-hour shifts, and then I was like doing what I was doing in the SEAL teams. When we did get together, the time was it was used wisely. It was very precious. It was like all about like getting to know each other, opposed to let's go watch a movie or let's go do. It was like us really sitting and dissecting each other, because we knew that time was limited, because the next day I'd be off and she'd be in residency or whatever the case may be.
And it could have, I feel like in the same way, sorry to interrupt you, but it also, there's a chance that you might not have been returning, right? So you really got to know someone. And,
and we got married. We've been married for 12 years, going on 13 years. Nice. You know what I'm saying? And so I would say, it's all about really asking. You got to be an investigator, especially nowadays, bro. And it's not hard to with social media and the internet and all that. You could just Google, type in somebody's name and kind of see their track record and see what they've been on and see what they're doing. And I would say, you being a podcaster and interviewing people, you could tell when somebody's BSing you. You know what I mean? You could tell when it's...
Oh, totally, man. And I've learned through painful experiences, getting my heart broken, ignoring red flags, But that's great, man. I'm very happy for you. That's awesome. Yeah. And I just learned a lot from that conversation.
Yeah. Set a standard, stick to that standard. Have as we say in the military, no-go criteria. Yeah. Hey, this is my no-go. This is my line. And a big thing for me is respect. Like another thing, like how do you treat the waiters? How did the girl treat the waiter? How does the girl I was dating treat their father, their brother, like the waiter, like the garbage man? Like how do they talk to them? How do they look down at them? Like how do they look at them? Because that's because everything is perfect when you first start dating. Yeah. When you get married, everything ain't perfect no more, because the show is over. Mm-hmm. It's just like, me and my wife, we've gone through a whole lot of nannies, like with our kids. And the first interview is perfect. Yeah, we'll play with the kids. Yeah, we'll do this. Oh, we love them. We're just like, cool. And then like 2 weeks in, we're just like, it's time to fire this person because they ain't doing all the things that they said they're going to do. That's the way it is with relationships. Everything is perfect up front, because if it wasn't, then two people want to get married, right? So everything is perfect up front. Things start to come out as time progresses, once you get into a real serious committed relationship. Mm-hmm. But you can see and learn certain things by the way the person you're dating or whoever, treats the people in their sphere of influence. Case in point, I remember dating this girl, and she was beautiful girl. She was just so rude to people, bro. Like, she was just so rude, like, to her roommate. You know what I mean? Like, she was just so rude to waiters. And then she'd be super nice to me, but she was just, like, rude to people, like, mean-spirited. Like, when it didn't even need to be. And I remember telling her one day, I was like, I'm done playing this game with you. I'm like, you just don't know how to treat people right. Like, and I don't want to be with somebody, because if you're going to treat people like that, then what's going to happen 5-6 years from now? I'm sick or something's going on. You know what I mean? Like, how are you going to treat me? And she was like, I don't care, whatever. I said, you're going to be alone, bro. I told her, I was like, you're going to end up alone and never married, because bro, I met her before I met my wife. I've been married for 12 years. So I must have said that about 13, 14 years ago. She's still single. Still single.
Yep.
She got a dog, but she's single.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It makes its way around, man. And
so,
it's her fault.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of his time, and we're running a little bit out. But every single one of these topics has been super impactful. Yeah. I'm curious, what are simple, everyday things or habits that someone who might not necessarily have their life all figured out, what are things that they can implement, you think, that have really helped you or that you've seen help other people? I know you said being on time, and I think it was your podcast with Jocko.
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, for the everyday I would just say, like, set goals, man. Set incremental goals. Like for me, like I have goals every single day. Like not every Monday through Friday when it comes to my work. I get up 6:30 and go downstairs. I make juice. I juice some of the most horrible things: broccoli, kale, ginger, turmeric, a couple strawberries, a couple carrots, celery, and I take the pulp out the broccoli, take the pulp from the broccoli, pulp from the carrot, put it back in there. It's disgusting. It tastes like wood root tonic, but that's what I do.
Because you know it's good for you.
I know it's good for me. I know it sucks, but I know it's good for me. And then I make breakfast for my kids, and I really try to focus that time on my kids and talking to them and getting them ready for school, taking them to school, which is my next goal, getting them to school on time. Like my one son goes to private school, my other son goes to private teacher, and then I go from there to the gym. I think for me, the gym is my medicine. It's like my mental medicine. And that's something that I encourage people to do is like hit the gym.
Yeah, you cannot not be working out.
Exercise.
Yeah. That is like one non-negotiable that every single person, unless you're, if you're able-bodied, you need to be working out.
Yeah, and it's good for the mind. Like as a creative, as a storyteller, I get so many ideas about like character arc and 3-act structure and how I'm going to set up this scene while I'm working out because the blood flow is going to the brain and I'm just getting all of these fresh ideas. And so I would say do that. Have these goals and have your day structured in a way where there's flexibility. If something else comes up, you could plan for contingencies. But I would say that a way a person can get better and do better is you structure your days, you know, and structure days with hard things and things you do not want to do. I hate working out. And what I mean by that is I love working out, but I hate working out. Why do I hate working out? Because my workouts are painful. Freaking painful.
And it's important that you do it early in the morning too, as opposed to at the end of the day. It sets the tone.
Yep.
Well, that's great. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
Final question of the podcast, and I ask this to every single guest since I think number 2, someone said it to me. I thought it was one of the most interesting questions I've heard. What's one thing that you hold to be true that you think that everyone else would certainly disagree with?
That we all have unlimited potential. Like that's the one thing I believe. And I know so many people don't. And, you know, me and my wife have this argument sometimes about my oldest son because my oldest son is dyslexic. And she's like, well, he can't do this, and this. I'm like, babe, if he has my DNA in him, he could figure this out, whatever situation. And it's just the reality. And that's one of our, Hendo did a photo shoot here. One of our shirts says unlimited potential. On the back of the shirt, it's an MRI of the brain, and the brain matter, the brain matter is made up of the words unlimited potential. Because I truly believe that within our brain, we don't have unlimited potential physically. I can't fly, but we all have unlimited potential here where we can literally accomplish absolutely anything. And the one thing that showed me that, like my mom kind of beat that into me as a kid. And when I say I don't mean literally, but she would always kind of, you could do anything, you could do it, you just got to put your mind to it. And it was like, I didn't really believe it. And it wasn't until I got to SEAL training, and not just me getting through SEAL training, but seeing like Charlie Keating. He's a SEAL that, you know, he got killed on an operation in 2016, got awarded the Silver Star. I'm on the board for his foundation, the C4 Foundation. And when we were in Hell Week, he had an ulcer in his mouth. And we're in Hell Week, which means you got to eat constantly because Hell Week starts on Sunday, ends on Friday. You get, 2 hours of sleep on Wednesday. Starts on Sunday, ends on Friday. You get 2 hours of sleep on Wednesday, 2 hours of sleep on Thursday. By Wednesday, you're so wired because you've been up that you can't sleep anyway, and all instructors do is torture you. And by Wednesday at Hell Week, he developed an ulcer in his mouth, so he couldn't eat. So the dude lost so much weight, and he still kept on going through, made it through Hell Week, right? That's unlimited potential. That's like, yo, I'm gonna get through it, right? It all starts up here. And so, not just me getting through, I couldn't swim when I showed up to SEAL training. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and people like, you ain't gonna be able to make it because you can't swim. Unlimited potential. I made it through. I didn't have the academic scores when I joined the Navy to be a SEAL. I couldn't swim, and I was skinny as a whip. Unlimited potential. I got through it. Class I graduated with, it started with 270, 29 of us graduated. Like, I have unlimited potential. We all have unlimited potential. And so that's something that I hold true. And a lot of people just don't believe it. And the sad thing is a lot of people don't believe it for themselves.
I perfectly said. And the first step is you just have to somehow, in whatever way, convince yourself that there is the potential there, because you can't grow if you don't know where you're going. But
exactly.
That's a perfect way to end it, man. Thank you so much for coming on, brother. I've learned a ton about this. I hope everyone else watching and listening, whatever, learned a ton as well.
Most definitely.
Thank you, my friend.
No problem. Shout out to Hendo for hooking it up.
Thank you, my friend.